Thursday, 18th of May, 2023. And this is the all delegate meeting number 6 in term number 6. And we are running it at 1800 UTC in the evening for those that might wonder at a later time. And what I will do, I will share my welcome everybody, first of all, and welcome also anyone looking at recording later on. I will just very quickly run up the agenda so we just know and have a feeling what comes on. Run through. Number 1, we just approve the agenda. Maybe someone have something very vital to add or whatever, any change. Number 2 is going through the different working groups, the 3 that are most active now, for now. And we have, of course, a strategy workshop where we have Gavriel here also, who was leading it. And we'll get a bit of a brief on session 1 discussions and the like. 2B is bylaws. And that will be looking at a little bit of various stuff, but one of the main ones will be mission statement. And just have a look on it, a teaser on it, because it was discussed quite a bit in the last meeting, and continue a bit of discussion on it. And then we have 2C comms media, some information update, a little bit brief. And number 3 is working group remuneration proposal. Some ideas on how we look at doing it, and hear from those in the meeting here today, also what they think, and discuss various options. Also to say as examples or hypothetical numbers, etc. for now. And number 4, other matters, if there's anything. Anyone, can we accept this agenda? No complaints, no changes? I hear nothing, so that means I presume it is accepted. And with that, I actually let number 2A, strategy workshop, and I give a word to Mo, please. You can guide us through.
Right. Well, first of all, it was we began by asking the question of what the problem was. These are the points that were primarily outlined. Defining the situation that we're currently in, basically the need to provide value for those giving funding to the organization, the lack of stable funding, the need to provide value for those that are funding us, identifying who are the people that are funding us, the ENF, Block 1, and where our funding is coming from, and the lack of direction of the community, the fact that we have no clear goals, and the inability to then be able to explain to those that have been contributing funding to us what we've been doing with the funds and how we have been able to provide value to them in exchange for that funding. So we discussed the infrastructure, and the fact that whether is that what we are what our goal is to fund infrastructure as a WPS or as a decentralized governance organization for other communities. So once again, the lack of direction that we've been suffering from over the past 2 years. These are all directions we've been moving towards, never really finishing any of them, and retracing our steps and going in different directions throughout the process. Another question has been that was raised was whether we're a private enterprise where we are looking for funding from other places, or even issuing a token ourselves, or do we need to provide funding to those that are giving us money and funds. Then we went over the signals as to what has caused or why we see ourselves in the situation that we're in. The lack of carry through, as I mentioned, from one project to the next. Basically a lack of continuity. Once we've embarked on certain projects, they've been abandoned after new chief delegates have been elected. So once again, the inability to keep funding for these projects leads us to an inability to then be able to describe and point to the value that we've created, because these projects have either not been finished or have been lost to the wayside, and there is no follow-up on on the projects or their status. The lack of accountability of the people that receive funding has also been an issue. Lack of bylaws that serve organizational direction and management. That's something that we've been discussing as well, and trying to solve for. So hopefully we can do something about that. No processes, no decision about the workflow to follow, lack of structure or organization. I mean, I'm going to speed this up a little bit just to not get caught up in all of the details. You guys can look through the document, but generally, these are the issues that we've been identifying in the organization across the last 2 years and how they've added up to the situation we're in now. So the objectives, we've also done some work on identifying what those are, and generally coming to the conclusion that we want to drive value back to those that are giving us funding. That is the general consensus of the people that were at the meeting, and we welcome any further comments from the community if they want to add to that conversation. And so that also led us to what are the potential sources of funding, exploring the fact of the possibility of issuing a token, going to different blockchains, going to other benefactors or previous benefactors, such as Block One or the ENF, or even becoming a block producer and funding ourselves. So those were all points of discussion. And then as well, also other means of creating that value that we can provide to those funding us. Marketing and social media, tapping into our large network of people that are already involved in the DAO. The governance as a service, grants, and a starter or a starter launch pad for projects. So the idea is generally to drive value back to those funding us. How do we do so? This is a list of what those possibilities are. So as to align ourselves better with those funding us currently, which is the ENF, which is the EOS network. We also discussed what their objectives are: mass adoption, increasing network usage, increasing the value of the token, also known as the ranking and market cap, the finance and the demand for the network services and the token itself via dApps, tokenomics, utility, and return on investment. If they fund us, what do they want back? They want value back. So the idea is to align ourselves with what their needs are. So we always need to keep that in consideration. If we're getting funding from the network, what are we returning back to the network? How do we quantify that value? What is our objective, and how can we objectively point to that value and say that was created, justifying our funding? So if we can solve all of these things, the question was then, what will it improve? What are the measures of success? We will have role clarity for members and delegates. We will have budget clarity. We will align on bylaw proposals. We will remove toxic debates, and we will get funded for 2024 and beyond. So if we can come to a consensus on what the goal is, we can then align everything else under it. It'll all fall into place. That is another way of saying that. At that point, I wrap up the summary on the strategy workshop. If anyone has any questions or wants to ask anything specific about what I just discussed, please feel free.
Gavriel, you want to add anything to this summary so far?
Just the idea that collectively, once we've agreed what this challenge is, the problem space, and then we move forward and figure out the solution and the plan, and we have consensus, we want to make sure that in the next election cycle, we are kind of campaigning together so that whoever we elect, we're going to be electing something that we all have agreed on as the theme and the direction of the community. Otherwise, if that's not clear and people are electing people randomly because they want their pet projects or a different direction that the community doesn't have consensus on, then we're back at square one. We're not going to succeed. So to me, the culmination of this process together is that we go into the next election with a strong community intention and focus, so we get the right people elected with the right agenda, the right perspective on bylaws, or whatever it happens to be.
Gavriel, would you mind if we drop the link directly, or would you prefer that people aren't able to comment on the document at this point?
No, I think that, to me, that's fine. If that's good with you guys, it makes sense to me. They'll have visibility of the next couple of workshops. It can help get the cogs turning and people engaged. I'm happy with the transparency. We're not giving, there's no secrets here, so nothing in my mind. So if you guys are happy with it, it makes sense to me. It could be commentable, the middle ground. So it can't be directly editable, but people could add comments in the sidebar.
Okay. Why not? Yeah.
Just like we see on this screen share, Gavriel will have his own comment on the right-hand side, so it will not disturb the text itself.
Voilà.
Okay, we will arrange for that, at least by tomorrow. Mo will actually continue under item 2B on bylaws. We had a meeting on bylaws, and unfortunately a number of apologies not showing up. But we went through some of those initial pointers we had, flags, and one was particularly discussed, the mission statement proposal. So I leave it with that over to Mo to kind of deliberate a bit and see what views might be here, if that is convenient.
The proposed mission statement. The Eden On EOS DAO is dedicated to increasing the value of the EOS community by directing its human and financial capital, seeking out and incubating potential value generators, and leveraging its assets to support this endeavor. In my view, I think this is a mission statement that directs everyone's vision towards a specific goal. It unites us behind that goal and makes it clear in which direction and what we're electing for. As I was saying earlier, two things were proposed that were missing from this mission statement. The addition of something to indicate that Eden on EOS is decentralized. So that was the addition of DAO to indicate that that is the case, that we are a decentralized autonomous organization. And the question of what community we are increasing the value of. So the word EOS was also added in front of community. I think in general that mission statement encapsulates what the purpose of this organization should be, what the bylaws that are going to be written for, and generally should start uniting everyone behind a common vision, as was identified in the strategy workshop, the issue of aligning us with our funders. So the question then becomes, or the later questions are going to be, well, I'll leave those to the strategy workshop, but does anyone have anything to add or any questions regarding this mission statement?
I think it's a very well broked mission statement, because we can break down behind the topics into this mission statement that are financial capital, incubating potential, value generators. That's topic inside the mission statement. That's not just to say raise more value for EOS. That's so like a boat, something so broad. Here, that's already defining what are the topics into this mission statement that we can break down, and we have not yet all the answers. That's beauty. That's good. We have just put the let's say the chapters, and that's open the discussion. So I think it's very smart mission statement.
It's a good idea to state EOS in particular if we're looking for funding, say, outside of EOS. In my mind, like, the mission statement should be something that's like long-term, that allows us to say approach other projects and be like, hey, our mission is to support all the projects that are like supporting us, as opposed to just EOS in particular.
Basically what Patrick just wrote, it's Eden on EOS. So even one of the proposals in the bylaws that we've made is to change every instance where it says Eden in the bylaws to Eden on EOS. So this organization is going to specifically be dedicated to EOS. If there is another organization that needs to be created, then another organization needs to be created for any other projects. If there needs to be for example, Eden on or Antelope on Eden, I guess. Eden on Antelope. I don't know which way that would work. But that would be a unity of or a coalition of blockchains working together, all of these different Edens on each blockchain. So, but this one specifically
that makes
needs
sense.
to be
Especially because EOS has been funding it so far.
Right. And that's kind of been what a little bit of the problem, that because we haven't been able to wrap our minds around that idea that's the reason why we've been receiving this funding. So we need to give back to the people that have been funding us specifically, if we want to continue receiving funding from them. If we want to go in a different direction, there's no reason why we can't change the name, and maybe we'll still change the name either way. But the idea is that we need to acknowledge right now who our benefactors are and return funding to them.
Yep, that makes sense to me.
Okay, Patrick has some final words on this.
Yeah, I think it's very smart to begin with EOS, because that's the settlement layer. That's microtransaction, and that's the public and permissionless blockchain. And EOS mainnet is part of the Antelope coalition. And then when you begin with EOS first, then you can go to the other Antelope networks, UX, Telos, and WAX. So that's very intelligent to begin with EOS. Like this, we are focused, and we are not the eyes bigger than the body, because we have to begin somewhere.
We went over the first half of the bylaws with the group that met with us yesterday, I believe. Since it was a small group, we decided to go over them again, and they weren't the same people that were there the first time. So we just kind of did a little bit of a summary on what we had done in the previous meeting, and nothing much changed in that aspect.
And I can also mention that I intend to, if all times allow, but by tomorrow evening, my time here, UTC, I would have updated a bit in Telegram as well, because the discussion we had yesterday's meeting kind of put in doubt some of the previous proposals. So just to see if I can round it off nicely in the text-wise for further discussion until we do have a next meeting.
We urge everyone here that has made a commitment as a delegate to take part in bylaws to be active in that group. That's what we're doing. So that's how you can contribute. Yeah,
and when we announced that meeting we had yesterday, we also said that we would have a next meeting this Sunday at 1500 UTC. And that was tentatively scheduled already. We haven't discussed that, Mo, but I'll start with you. What do you say about Sunday 1500 for bylaw again?
I have no issue with doing that. I just wanted to also mention that Lenny and I have made the effort to make them those meetings 2 times a week to make sure that we can catch as many people as possible. So we'd also appreciate the effort from everyone here to try to attend those meetings if you have made commitments to be part of the bylaws. And if you haven't, we'd still appreciate you contributing your ideas.
Everyone here, and also those who watch a recording. And if you cannot attend the meeting, you're welcome to add your comments in Telegram, because we read through that too and weigh that in our discussions. And of course, there are the recordings of those meetings in each relevant topic. Anything more on bylaw?
Yes.
Okay. Then I move to 2C and give that's comms media, and I'll let you breathe a bit, Mo, and then I can just very shortly run through. We had a discussion going through with Comms Media and basically settled down how we're going to work forward in a spreadsheet that you've heard Jon earlier have worked and set up. And we will continue on that basis and spread around, delegate around who does what, because it's quite a massive work to identify all the different sites or different iterations of Eden On EOS name on internet and the value of each site, the ownership of those reasonable sites that it looks good to possibly somehow make use of or work with. And there's a bit of work there and contact details for owners so that we can organize that future according to outlines we made earlier. And we also possibly we had there, start with that. We had there a tentative meeting also in the weekend, but we haven't settled down on any particular day or date. I had in mind do similar like we did Wednesday, but we follow through an hour later, as in Sunday 1600 for next media comms. What do you say, Mo?
I can make myself available.
Yeah, we'll see if how it turns out when we put it out on Telegram and similar, and see what noise we get, if we get enough people together to make it worthwhile. A little bit depend on some meetings we have tomorrow too, possibly, and which might impact on it. Okay, otherwise not much more new to say from Comms Media. Any questions on that part?
I can go over a little bit more as well.
Yes.
As Lenny was saying, the idea of getting all of the sources in one place, so creating a registry, is kind of what the vision is in that sense, and filtering out any content or any websites that are not being maintained. And so we've had questions regarding about who would manage it and how that would be run. If anyone has ideas from that sense, feel free to contribute to that. Also, what it would be producing. We would expect that that communication circle or that working group to maybe do news, brief summaries, analysis, spotlighting and interviewing for specific events, projects, activities, communities, graphic content creation, handling international language communications. All of these kind of things would be included in that communications and media group. So we discussed different processes for how that would be managed and ranked. We touched on the fractal process being a candidate, a possible means of arranging how the productivity of that circle would be managed. So do you guys think it's possible to dedicate an amount of the funds that you've received to the working groups and the circles? Is that something that the delegates would be interested in doing?
If it supports the agenda that for next year, then absolutely.
What about specifically the working groups and circles that would be created, or let's say that would start receiving funding starting from next month, just to set like a date of when they would start receiving funding?
What would the working groups be doing from next month?
For example, right now we're working with the communications and media working group, with the bylaws working group, with the elections and administrative working group, which is still to be set up. The what's the fourth one, Lenny?
I have to look here now. We have bylaw, of course, comms and media, strategy, and then the admin is for later on.
The reputation circle as well.
Yeah, of course. Yes, sorry.
The point being that if we could set up a pool, start distributing funding to these circles and establishing some sort of structure to this organization where we're getting people in the habit of it, how much would you guys be willing to contribute from the funds that you guys have already received?
Is it possible to direct part of the received funds to the working group? I mean, in smart contract, for example? For example, 10%.
It's an interesting proposal. I think that would have to get built out.
Mm.
But it's
Right
very,
now-
I just add that it's a very interesting aspect of it actually for future. This term, I don't think we'll have a chance to have that organized with a smart contract and similar, but it's a good idea, Jenny. It is indeed.
Best case scenario, we might be able to do it with an MSIG.
Mm.
Patrick?
I am not a delegate level 1 on this term, but I'm sure if I am a delegate level 1 on next term, I will use part of my funds to distribute to the Circle Mediacom.
Let me
Because
say, if
I will do that.
If things work out correctly, you shouldn't have to.
No, but I want. It doesn't matter what happened. And I think it's to answer to complete what Evgeny just stated with a percentage from the smart contracts. From one side, it's a good idea. From another side, it's a bad idea. Because I think without any change into the smart contract, we want to minimize the change into the code, more change in the code, more side effect, and then the MSIG and all this stuff. So I think it's up to every delegate level 1 or new CD that is going into a new election to be clear what he wants to do with his funds. So I just speak for myself. If I have funds, like the last time, I will distribute where that should be needed. And that's that. And now to give more exposure to this term, I will interview again Mo and Lenny on Antelope Swiss workshop. I will interview you again before the end of this term to make a nice exposure for Eden on EOS and all what we have covered here, to do a resume interview. And I am committed to do so. And I don't ask any funds for that, by the way.
We appreciate the offer, and we'll discuss it.
Yeah, definitely. And we did invite you to actually approach us middle of a term so that you can a little bit measure up. Did we do any of all the talking we did? Of course, that's what it's all about, transparency. Mo, continue.
Yeah. Essentially, what we're trying to do here is establish a template for the next set of chief delegates to, one, understand the value of the working groups and circles. At this point, we're calling them working groups, but the idea is that they turn into circles, which are fixed, and the chief delegates have the ability to decide on the funding for each one of them. Hopefully, if we can move to a funding formula where we have the CapEx and the OpEx assigned, from there, the chief delegates should be able to assign funding to the circles. So people won't, the future delegates won't need to donate funding to these circles. What I'm asking of you guys now is if you guys think it's possible that we can organize something to start setting that up as a precedent, per se.
Seems like we might need to think it over. And partly also why this is raised in this manner is that earlier on there was talk about, I mean, in the earlier terms, there were talks about having common projects working together a little bit. If people don't know exactly where to put funding for bringing forth, valuable production of something, then maybe putting the funds together to agree on and discuss certain projects. This is a bit of a variation of that theme, but similarly, some delegate might not really have a clear focus where they would like to make most use, and it usually would then go to Pomelo and similarly, but we also got to maintain our own house and get that up in order. So just to have that in mind as well. Gavriel?
I think part of it might be to do with campaigning as well, is if delegates are elected, then they're either elected on the basis of having value to the community beyond just the election, contributing their own time or connection or whatever it is. And part of that might be the funding might be therefore to cover themselves personally to an extent. They should also have a suggested plan of what they'd do with additional money, or such as the working groups where they think it should go, or whatever. So I'm in favor of it. I think there needs to be just that consensus and momentum in the community that L1 delegate funding has a responsibility to contribute to the overall mission. Then it should make sense and everyone should align on it. And then if we get people who don't contribute either of themselves and or by funding whatever the community is behind, then we know those people shouldn't be elected in future elections type thing, which is part of the process, I guess.
Thank you. Mo, continue.
No, fully in agreement with everything Gavriel just mentioned. And yeah, I'd say that the next step, depending on what kind of consensus we come to within this group, would be for Lenny and I to then discuss with the delegates that elected us and bring them into the fold of what we're expecting, what you guys have decided to do, inform them of what would be expected of them, and see if they're also in agreement with moving forward in that manner. Because I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't here today that won't be informed of that until after we decide and after the precedent that you guys set. So if you guys are in agreement with that, then the next question that I would ask everyone, anyone else have anything to say regarding that before I move on?
Well, I think an interesting point, Gavriel brought up an interesting point, and it makes me ponder why politicians are paid something. So are we suggesting that the delegates don't retain any compensation whatsoever, and that everything that they acquire is spent into circles or otherwise? Is that what we're suggesting here? That will change the dynamics for sure. The incentives of people wanting to put time and energy into voting, and maybe that is the right way to go. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too much because it's been generally open up to now. So I think that's worth talking about, whether we're going to set a precedent, either a custom or eventually at some point a bylaw that says you must spend all your money in circles or you must not spend it on yourself.
To answer that question, I think Gavriel explained it pretty well. There's a portion of your funding that you allocate to yourself. You understand how much your time is worth, and you state that ideally in the elections. From one side, part of it, from another, where we're at today, that question is, and the way that I pose the question is, are you guys willing to donate some of your funding to the circles? I'm not asking for anyone to give all of their funding. That would be illogical, but it would be greatly appreciated, but illogical. However, the question is a portion of the funding to jumpstart this process and set this precedent of having established circles that can be seen as having value by the next set of chief delegates. So the next question would be, how much do you guys think would be the minimum amount per week or per month or per season that would make a working group or a circle attractive to people to join? And what do you guys think is doable with what we have now?
Per person? Or per circle?
Let's say per circle. Just to not get too much into the nitty gritty. I'll do that after we answer this question.
Depends on the circle.
Exactly.
Yeah, it depends on the circle. Like communications and marketing is going to require more people, more resources to do. Say bylaws don't take up as much resources as less time is spent creating stuff. I think we can group it overall as in like together all the different circles, like together how much we should be allocating to it. We can figure out like the percentages for each separate circle afterwards.
Seems fair.
I don't really have a number in mind, but it should be maybe close to half of what all the current delegates are receiving right now. I think that's a reasonable number just to get things started.
Half of what all current delegates are receiving in terms of a total amount, a pool to then distribute per circle.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe that's about what, 30K that all the delegates are distributing. So half of that would be 15.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable number to be working with. Depending on what's being produced via the marketing side or like the bylaws, it could be, depends on how everybody values their time really, right? Because some people could be valuing their times 10 times as much as somebody else, but people should be compensated for the work they put in, even if it's like a small amount.
To narrow it down further, we would say that that 15K would be per season, not per month or anything. And at this point, we're already past the halfway point of the season. So to assume that maybe there's a month left, maybe a month and a half, let's say a month, just to get more specific, we have about, that would be a third of the 15K, so 5 is what we would be targeting to raise to then distribute amongst the circles. How much do people value their time? What do you guys think would be a fair amount to pay someone as a minimum?
It might relate to the value that we can bring to the EOS network once we figure that stuff out. Is what are we contributing to them, and then maybe we can figure out market rates or something that aligns with the value that we deliver, and then to create a budget financial plan that makes sense to that purpose and vision. It's tricky, but that's where I would think along the lines of.
You're definitely right in that regard. My view right now is just basically to do something ad hoc to set up the precedent to have something ready to move on to give to the next season. So these are kind of the numbers that we're working with here. Assuming that a circle has 5 members, and if it has a lead, a secretary, and an organizer, which are the roles that are customarily utilized within a circle to establish organization, you would have to reward them maybe a little bit more than the regular the other participants that are not regular participants, given that you would expect these 3 roles to be there every single week and carry on the duties that would come out of these meetings throughout the week between meetings. So given that we would reward them, and once again, these numbers are all tentative, they're all theoretical, anything is up for debate. There's no reason why any of these have to be fixed here. This is just an example. The main point of this is to establish a structure and to come to an agreement in how the productivity would be rewarded. So as you guys can see, we would then add up the points assigned here to the lead, the secretary, the organizer, and the working group would then meet. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the fractal process. So amongst themselves, they would come up with rankings that would allocate points to each one of the members, depending on how the group views the productivity of each member. So once they come to consensus, each one would be organized according to their ranking. And then we would say, for example, I had here 1,000 EOS to make the math simple per month. So 250 EOS per weekly meeting. That 250 EOS would then be divided by 30 because that's the total amount of points that are active within that meeting. That would give 8.3 EOS per point. So if you only received 1 point in that meeting, you would get 8.3 EOS. That's at the current rates, roughly like $7 an hour, I guess, for showing up at that meeting plus whatever you contributed to it. But apparently, if you received a 1 point for your contribution, it may not have been that much. So assuming that would be the points. If you're a lead, a secretary, or organizer, you would automatically receive 5 points to start off with for your work as that role and whatever else you've been carrying on between meetings. So that's an automatic 41.66 EOS per meeting. Plus, if you are also a member of, or if you've also been doing other things and receive 4 or 3 or 2 or 1 in that meeting, you would also get the funds associated with that. So you'd be more incentivized to do something productive. So you guys can figure out how much that would equal by multiplying those. And that's how the distribution of the funding would go. So that makes it so that the chief delegates are paying for final results and expected productivity from prioritized working groups and circles. And Eden on EOS members will gravitate towards working groups and circles with less people participating in them because they will see that there's a greater opportunity to receive more funding. So from one side, you would incentivize people to go to the areas that have less members. And from another point, you would get them active in these working groups by providing funding.
As you see up on the rating scale, we have those lead, secretary, organizer. Well, the lead is a given, of course, as when it comes to secretary and organizer, the thinking there is that is a little bit what the working group would have to determine, depending on how it develops and the need at the time. And so there's a number of variables even within this. So this does not mean we're putting in place 3 people as officers. No, not at all. But that's a different issue. This is hypothetical already now.
So this, for me, this begs the question, how are the members of the circle decided? I guess I have to assume that the leads are determined by the chief delegates, and then go ahead.
This point, the lead is going to be assigned by the chief delegates.
Okay, so
the secretary and the organizer, like as Lenny was pointing out, is roles that even depending on the size of the circle, they may or may not be necessary.
And who determines those roles? Who the placement of those roles? Who takes those seats?
That can be done by consensus.
Consensus of who?
Within the circle.
But if there's just one person, the lead, it starts with the lead. Now, how are those roles filled?
Well, initially, just to start this off, the circles are voluntary. So anyone can join the circles. You can have a circle with 30 people in them.
Okay. Okay, so people join a circle, they're just a regular circle member, and then the lead starts appointing roles, secretary, organizer.
The lead would then possibly initiate an election where consensus would have to be reached to appoint a secretary and organizer.
Okay. My initial response to this is that I like it, except I think the genius of the ranking, of the fractal ranking process, I think embodies the best, the most accurate manifestation or evaluation of the work effort. And I don't think that the roles, the appointment of roles, we can appoint somebody to do this, they could do that, but in the end, people have their own opinion. They figure out best who's actually doing the most valuable work in their own eyes. It's subjective, but my initial response to this is eliminate the assignment of the roles in terms of the ranking, and just say everybody gets together. We just do a fractal. We figure out who contributed. That's response.
Initially, the appointment of the lead is something Lenny and I have taken upon ourselves to facilitate the progress, really, and having this move forward. And even that is difficult within itself. It hasn't been easy to find people that are consistent and willing to be attending every single one of these meetings. Lenny and I have been filling these roles by ourselves, really, for all of the meetings. Just to prove to you that at this point in time, the degree of centralization that is needed to move this forward, it just is what it is. So to start off, we're going to be appointing the lead, and the point you raised regarding the fractal process being a good way to play out who the best secretary or organizer or leader are. The issue with that is that to be a secretary or an organizer, you have to have specific characteristics. You have to want to do these roles. It's not a question of are you a good content creator? A content creator is great, but that's not what a secretary, what's required of a secretary or an organizer. So in that respect,
I'm suggesting that the leads have the freedom to organize their group however they see fit, but the actual distribution of EOS, of compensation, is left to the fractal process within that group.
So are you proposing that the lead, the secretary, and the organizer aren't compensated more than the other members?
It's possible that one position might have some differentiation, but I would be okay with it just being completely up to the group. But I could also see that one person could get like an extra bump, but not make it too complicated. Let the crowd figure it out. That's the genius of fractal. That's why we're all here.
If I might just a short comment, it's also a matter of what kind of lead do we wish. Certain qualities are sought, maybe even experience and skill. And those kind of people tend to be busy making money elsewhere and stuff. So you got to weigh in a number of variables and on it. And that's when we're talking about the lead in particular. If we're going to get functional group that actually deliver as well, productive way. So it's just a comment on it. And we are actually at the end of a meeting, but I leave you continue, Mo.
No, I would just generally say that what Perry is pointing to is open for debate. It's really up to the how we're going to organize this, and then there's also going to be a degree of versatility and freedom for the groups to organize themselves. It is funding that the chief delegates will be allocating to these independent circles and groups. So then after that, the question is, how do they provide the value, the expected value and productivity that the chief delegates are expecting from them? How they spend those funds is then up to them. This is just a proposed formula for distributing the funding. I would go a step further and say even the question of what amount of funding they want to distribute amongst themselves in this manner might be up for discussion within that group. For example, if we said we want to allocate 1,000 EOS per month to a working group right now, they might decide amongst themselves that they want to work together on a specific project and allocate 500 EOS of that 1,000 EOS to that project, while then distributing the 500 left within themselves in a fractal manner. That would be up for them, leveraging maybe the proposals in Haifa that are available and things of that nature.
In the initial stages here now, through, I would say, most of this term, me and Mo both aspire to actually sit in on basically every working group meeting, because this is an experiment. We want to see how it develops. And we kind of, we're the ones who are organizing it also for funding and similar. So therefore, we will keep a close eye on it. We will not always take an active part, but we'll listen in like a fly on the wall a little bit. And if we can contribute, we do so. Okay, Mo, I'll let you finish off and maybe let Patrick in.
Other than that, if anyone has any other questions that they want to ask about the proposed process, maybe Dan, who understands the Eden fractal process best.
Sorry for being late. I just got home.
Not a problem. You're catching the end of the meeting.
Yeah, you're getting the tail of it. You have to watch the recording. Okay,
Sure.
Patrick, short word.
Yeah, short word, yeah. Before to speak about numbers and distribution of numbers and make some mathematics and figure out all those things, I think the first thing to know if the people are willing to give their funds to the circles. That's the first question to answer or to arrive. For me, it's obvious for sure. I will do this. And then if you are going into the circle, that's not the time to waste your tongue. That's the time to do the things and to be very committed. So I don't see really the fractal process here very useful for that. I will be very clear. We need some people doing the things. That's not the time to waste the time, to masturbate the brain, to figure out how we want to do the things, but we have to do the things. So the people that are joining the circle, if I would, and I will join some of them for sure, either if I am not a delegate, that doesn't matter for me. That's just you want to be in and you want to participate and you want to do something. And that's that first. And to finish, when you receive funds, that's your responsibility to distribute the funds for the projects that are needed or the initiatives that are needed. That's not the time to think about, I keep the money for me. Yeah, you have to keep a little bit for your time that you pass. For example, for doing the interviews, video during a term, a good 1,000 EOS could be something normal. But some people will say, oh, no, it's not enough. I will not even pass 1 minute of my time if I receive just 1,000 EOS. So think about that. First, if you are motivated to change something for the next term, and when you go to the next term, you should arrive with a plan, a platform, and to have a voice and to follow what we have put in place during this term. That's my opinion. Otherwise, as you stated, Mo or Gavriel, if you are having a new election and you try to pitch your thing without to be cohesive and inclusive for the entire thing, your project is just a project for you, and it's not the project for the entire community. And with that, I stop here. Thank you to have given me the chance to speak something here. Thank you.
Mo, you get the final words before I close today's meeting.
I just want to say that in the chat, we can see Gavriel, Brian, before leaving. We're all enthusiastic about the way and the direction that we're moving and supporting the process, the ideas. I would say, and I would leave everyone here with the idea of, or with the thought that contemplate on how much you would be willing to give and how much would be an interesting number for people to see as a possible way of earning funding through the circles. So what would incentivize people to join those circles and give from whatever donations you can. Has Pomelo season 7?
End of May, sorry, I'm out off by a month, end of this month.
Season
Either way,
6,
season
season
six,
6, Pomelo starting. And I will interview Daniel Keys to do an update about this.
Remind him to show up for the meeting. What was I saying? Yeah. Think about the amounts that would be interesting for people to see as a pool within these working groups and what would incentivize them to want to join and contribute. And we can discuss next week and throughout the week how much that could be and that should be. And hopefully we can move that forward and establish these working groups as a basis and a formula for the next set of chief delegates to want to preserve and move forward with it.
Thank you, Mo. And
Well,
I do not have much more to add right now, and we even ran over a little bit, but not too much. We want to try to keep it to a 1-hour sessions to keep control of it, and have not much more. I see someone warming up. I guess I give him 15 seconds this time to do the final goodbye. Thank you everyone for showing up and for watching this later recording. Patrick, your 15 seconds now then.
Absolutely. We are here on Eden On EOS, the only one. We are not in Eden. We are in Eden On EOS specific. We have to do the things. That's not the time to waste our time, not the time to make big theories on the Big Bang. So go Eden On EOS. 3, 2, 1, 0. Go
Eden On EOS.
Eden On
You
EOS.
understand?
Thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
Thank you all.
See you in any of the next coming meetings, or maybe even all of them. Thank you.
Yeah, see you
Okay.
next time. Bye.
Bye.
Woo!